The night he asked me about my biggest wish, I realized the cruelest thing about poverty wasn't having too little, it was believing you deserved no more. The smell of garlic, butter, and fresh bread clung to my uniform long after every shift ended. No matter how many times I washed it, the scent stayed with me, as if reminding me exactly where I belong. Every evening, I tied my blonde hair into the same loose ponytail, buttoned the same black waitress shirt over my soft, curvy frame, and forced the same practiced smile that customers expected before they even looked at my name tag. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 26 years old, and if you asked most people who visited Bellissimo Italian restaurant in Manhattan, they probably wouldn't remember me at all. They remembered the wine. They remembered the music. They remembered the expensive desserts. Not the chubby waitress carrying everything with sore feet and tired shoulders. I had grown used to being invisible. Invisible people overheard things. Invisible people cleaned up broken glasses before anyone complained. Invisible people apologized for mistakes they didn't make because it was easier than arguing with customers who believed tipping gave them ownership over another human being. Friday nights were always the worst. The dining room shimmered beneath crystal chandeliers while soft piano music floated through the air. Couples celebrated anniversaries. Executives signed million-dollar deals over imported wine. Every polished marble surface reflected a world I had never belonged to. Emily, my manager called from across the room. Table 16 just sat down. VIP guests. Don't mess this up. I won't. I picked up a silver tray before taking a slow breath. My knees already hurt, even though the dinner rush had barely started. I'd worked the breakfast shift at a neighborhood cafe before coming here, and tomorrow morning I'd be back again before sunrise. 2 jobs still weren't enough after my mother's dialysis bills swallowed almost every paycheck I earned. Sometimes I'd catch customers staring at my body. Not with kindness. Not even curiosity. Just quiet judgment wrapped inside polite smiles. One woman once whispered to her husband, loud enough for me to hear, "Maybe she should spend less time around pasta." I smiled anyway. Because smiles paid rent. Tears didn't. As I approached table 16, conversation throughout the restaurant seemed to soften without anyone saying a word. 4 men in perfectly tailored dark suits had just entered. The hostess straightened her posture. Managers suddenly appeared from nowhere. Even the bartender glanced toward the entrance before pretending he hadn't. Power had a strange sound. It wasn't loud. It was the silence everyone else created around it. The man walking in front looked about 34, tall enough that everyone instinctively stepped aside before realizing they had done it. His charcoal suit fit as though it had been sewn onto him. Short brown hair. Calm blue eyes. No jewelry except a simple watch that probably cost more than my car. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He simply looked like someone the world had already decided to obey. "Mr. Romano," my manager greeted him nervously. "Your usual table is ready." Romano. The name meant nothing to me. At least, not yet. I carried a basket of warm bread toward their table, keeping my eyes lowered the way years in customer service had taught me. Halfway there, a little boy rushed across the dining room chasing a red balloon that had slipped from his hand. He was heading straight toward one of the servers balancing an entire tray of steaming dishes. Without thinking, I set my own tray down and caught the child just before he collided with her. The hot plates rattled. Nothing spilled. The little boy looked up at me with frightened eyes. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I smiled and handed him his balloon. "It's okay," I said softly. "Some things are more important than dinner." When I stood again, I noticed someone watching me. Adrian Romano hadn't touched the menu. His blue eyes were fixed entirely on me. Not on my body. Not on the small stain near my apron pocket. Not on the awkward way I shifted weight off my aching feet. He watched me as though he had just seen something no one else in the room had noticed. I used to believe wealthy people asked questions they already knew the answers to. That night, Adrian Romano proved me wrong with a single sentence that caught me completely off guard. I returned to table 16 carrying a bottle of sparkling water and 4 crystal glasses balanced carefully on my tray. Years of serving demanding customers had taught me how to move through crowded aisles without spilling a drop. Smile. Pour. Step back. Repeat. It was almost mechanical now. Your San Pellegrino, gentlemen. The 3 men seated with Adrian barely looked at me. One continued discussing a real estate acquisition downtown. Another answered a phone call in a low voice before excusing himself outside. Their conversations revolved around numbers so large they no longer sounded real. Millions. Contracts. Private jets. Entire buildings changing ownership as casually as I decided whether to buy milk or bread. I filled Adrian's glass last. Thank you, Miss Carter. My hand paused for half a second. Most customers never bothered reading my name tag. You're welcome. His voice wasn't intimidating. It was calm. That somehow made it even harder to ignore. As I turned to leave, one of the older gentlemen at a nearby table snapped his fingers without even looking at me. Mississippi. I walked over immediately. My steak is cold. I'm so sorry, sir. I'll have the kitchen prepare another one right away. He pushed the plate toward me with obvious irritation. If you moved a little faster, maybe food wouldn't arrive cold. The steak had been served less than 4 minutes earlier. I knew it. He knew it. Arguing would only guarantee there'd be no tip. I'm sorry, I repeated softly. Behind me, I felt someone's eyes following the exchange. When I returned from the kitchen 10 minutes later, Adrian's table had finished their appetizers. The other men resumed discussing business while he quietly studied the restaurant around him. Not the decorations. Not the expensive wine collection. People. The exhausted dishwasher rubbing his shoulder before carrying another rack of plates. The pregnant hostess forcing herself to remain standing. The elderly busboy struggling with a heavy tub of dishes. He noticed everyone. It was strangely unsettling. I approached with their entrees. As I placed Adrian's filet mignon in front of him, he finally spoke. Emily. Hearing my first name from a complete stranger felt oddly personal. Yes, sir? If you could have one wish. He paused, almost as though weighing every word. What would it be? I blinked. For a second I wondered if I'd misunderstood him. I'm sorry? One wish. His expression remained unreadable. No rules. No limits. What would you ask for? I laughed quietly, embarrassed. I think that's a question little kids answer. Maybe adults need it even more. The restaurant faded into background noise. I glanced around, expecting someone to smile or reveal this was some elaborate joke. No one did. I thought about saying a house. A vacation. Enough money to quit both jobs. Those answers would have been easy. Instead, another face appeared in my mind. My mother. Pale. Exhausted. Trying to pretend dialysis wasn't slowly stealing everything from her except hope. My wish. I whispered. I swallowed the lump forming in my throat. I'd like my mom to stop worrying about medical bills. The words surprised even me. I want her to smile again without pretending. I looked down at my hands. And if wishes are allowed to have 2 parts. A small smile escaped before I could stop it. I'd like my little brother to finish college without working nights the way I do. Silence settled over the table. One of Adrian's associates slowly lowered his wine glass. Another stopped checking his phone. Nobody laughed. Nobody told me to dream bigger. Adrian simply watched me with those impossibly calm blue eyes. You didn't ask for anything for yourself, he said. I shrugged. I think I'd finally be happy if they didn't have to struggle anymore. For the first time that evening, something changed in his expression. It wasn't pity. It wasn't admiration. It looked almost like recognition. As if my answer had reminded him of a life he thought he'd buried a very long time ago. For several seconds neither of us spoke. It wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It felt heavier than that. Like something invisible had settled between us, something I couldn't explain. and didn't know how to escape. Then Adrian Romano gave the smallest nod. I hope your mother smiles again. That was all. No dramatic promises. No expensive business cards slid across the table. No offer to help. He simply picked up his fork and continued eating as though the conversation had never happened. I stood there another heartbeat before realizing I was still holding the empty water pitcher. Enjoy your dinner, I managed. My voice sounded strangely distant. The rest of the evening blurred into the familiar rhythm of restaurant life. Orders. Coffee refills. Birthday desserts. Dropped silverware. Children crying. Managers apologizing to customers who were never actually right. I kept catching myself glancing toward table 16. Not because Adrian was handsome, although he undeniably was. Not because everyone else seemed intimidated by him. Because of that question. Nobody had asked me what I wanted in years. People usually asked whether I could work another shift. Whether I could cover someone's weekend. Whether I could smile more. Whether I had brought extra ranch dressing. Never what I wished for. Around 10:30, the dinner crowd began thinning. Adrian's associates stood first, gathering their jackets while finishing the last of their wine. One of them handed the check folder toward Adrian. He barely looked inside before signing it with smooth, practiced strokes. Money clearly wasn't something he thought about. As they prepared to leave, I stepped forward with my customer service smile. Thank you for dining with us tonight. One of the men nodded politely. Another barely acknowledged me. Adrian stopped. Not dramatically. Just long enough to look directly into my eyes. Good night, Emily. Good night, Mr. Romano. He hesitated for the briefest moment, as though considering saying something else. Instead, he buttoned his charcoal coat and walked toward the exit. The glass doors opened. Cold November air drifted into the restaurant. Within seconds, he disappeared into the darkness outside. Through the windows, I caught a glimpse of several black SUVs waiting at the curb. Their headlights reflected across the rain-soaked pavement like ribbons of liquid gold. Security opened the rear door before Adrian climbed inside. The convoy pulled away without a single horn or screeching tire. Quiet. Disciplined. Almost invisible despite its obvious power. Emily! My manager's voice snapped me back. Stop daydreaming and clear table 16. Sorry. The restaurant was nearly empty now. Only abandoned wine glasses and folded linen napkins remained where four powerful men had spent their evening. I gathered the dishes one by one. The filet mignon was finished. The vegetables untouched. One crystal glass still held a finger of sparkling water. Everything looked strangely ordinary. As though the people sitting there hadn't carried the weight of an entire city on their shoulders. I reached for the leather check folder. Inside was a receipt. A signature. And a tip. $800. I stared at the number twice before blinking. My weekly grocery budget was less than that. My hands actually trembled. There wasn't any note. No phone number. No invitation. Nothing except a generous tip that felt almost unreal. Emily? I turned to find Lily, another waitress, peeking over my shoulder. Holy! She whispered. Is that real? I think so. She grabbed my arm. What did you do? Nothing. No one leaves $800 for nothing. I swear. She studied my face for a moment before laughing softly. Maybe rich people are just weird. Maybe. Or maybe Adrian Romano had already forgotten I existed. I folded the receipt carefully into my apron pocket before finishing my shift. By midnight, I stepped outside carrying my worn backpack. Rain had finally stopped. The city smelled of wet concrete and roasted chestnuts from a street vendor closing for the night. I climbed into my aging Honda, exhausted in every possible way. As I drove home through nearly empty Manhattan streets, I kept replaying his question. If you could have one wish. I smiled to myself. It had been a strange conversation. Nothing more. By morning, I was certain life would return to exactly what it had always been. I had no way of knowing that somewhere in Manhattan, while I was driving home to my tiny apartment, someone else had already decided my answer deserved far more than sympathy. The next morning, I woke up believing the most unusual thing that had happened to me was an $800 tip. By lunchtime, I would realize that had only been the beginning. My alarm rang at 5:30. The apartment was still dark. For a moment, I lay there listening to the familiar sounds beyond my bedroom door. The coffee maker sputtering to life. My mother's quiet cough. The old heating pipes knocking inside the walls every winter morning. Our apartment wasn't much. 2 bedrooms. Faded wallpaper. Furniture older than I was. But it was home. I pulled on my cafe uniform, kissed my mother on the forehead, and smiled before she could apologize for being sick again. "You should sleep more," she whispered. "I'll sleep when I'm rich." She laughed softly. "You've been saying that since you were 16. And one day I'll be right." Neither of us believed it. By 7 o'clock I was serving coffee to commuters rushing toward offices they probably hated. The breakfast shift passed quickly. Then another subway ride. Another uniform. Another smile. By 4 in the afternoon, I was back at Bellissimo preparing for the dinner crowd. Lily spotted me the moment I walked through the employee entrance. "There you are!" Her expression was unusually excited. "What? Someone came looking for you." I frowned. "For me?" She nodded. "A man in a black suit." I immediately thought of debt collectors. My father's unpaid loans had a habit of returning years after people forgot they existed. "What did he want?" "He wouldn't say." My stomach tightened. "He just asked if Emily Carter was working today." "And?" "I told him your shift started at 4. My pulse quickened. Before I could ask another question, our manager stepped out of his office. "Emily." His voice carried none of its usual impatience. "Come here." That alone felt strange. Managers didn't invite waitresses into their offices unless something had gone terribly wrong. I followed him inside. Waiting beside his desk stood a middle-aged man wearing an impeccably tailored black suit, white gloves, and polished shoes that reflected the ceiling lights. He looked less like a businessman and more like someone who belonged outside an embassy. His silver hair was neatly combed. His posture perfectly straight. When I entered, he offered a respectful nod. "Miss Emily Carter?" "Yes." "My name is William." His voice was warm, measured, almost formal. "I've been asked to deliver something personally." He reached down and lifted a rectangular black box onto the manager's desk. It was wrapped in matte black paper tied with a charcoal ribbon. No company logo. No return address. Just my name written in elegant silver lettering. I stared at it. "I'm sorry. I think you have the wrong person." William smiled gently. "I assure you, Miss Carter, I do not." My manager folded his arms. "Go ahead." With slightly trembling fingers, I untied the ribbon. The paper slipped away. Inside rested another box covered in black velvet. For some reason, my heartbeat became impossibly loud. I opened the lid. Nestled against dark satin was a sleek black card unlike any credit card I had ever seen. No colorful logos. No advertising. Just my full name engraved in silver. Emily Carter. Beneath it lay a single ivory envelope. I unfolded the letter. There was only one sentence. No signature. No explanation. No greeting. Just 7 words. "Your wish deserves a chance to come true." My eyes widened. I knew exactly who had asked me about my wish. "No," I whispered. "This can't be." William quietly placed a sealed folder beside the box. "Inside you'll find instructions regarding the card, along with contact information should you require assistance." I looked at him, completely overwhelmed. What is this?" "It belongs to you now. I can't accept something like this." His expression remained calm. "You are under no obligation to use it." He paused before adding one final sentence. "But Mr. Romano rarely changes his mind. The room fell silent. Even my manager, who had spent 20 years running one of Manhattan's busiest restaurants, looked as though he had forgotten how to breathe. Outside the office, word had already begun spreading among the staff. Something extraordinary had just arrived for the chubby waitress everyone usually overlooked. And before I even opened the folder, I could already feel dozens of curious eyes waiting outside the door. The first person who stopped believing me wasn't a stranger. It was someone who had watched me carry heavy trays for almost 3 years. The office door opened. Every conversation outside seemed to freeze at the exact same moment. Forks stopped clinking. Coffee stopped pouring. Even the dishwasher looked up from the sink. I stepped into the dining room holding the black velvet box with both hands, afraid I might drop it. 30 pairs of eyes followed me. Lily hurried over first. "Well?" she whispered. "What is it?" I opened the lid just enough for her to peek inside. Her mouth slowly fell open. "Emily." She looked from the card to me and back again. "That's impossible." "I know." Another server leaned closer. "What kind of card is that?" "I honestly don't know." Within seconds, 3 more employees surrounded us. Someone reached for the envelope. Someone else tried to read the silver engraving. The whispers spread faster than smoke. "Is it real? Who sent it? Did she win the lottery?" "No. I heard some billionaire came in last night." My manager clapped his hands loudly. Enough. Everyone reluctantly returned to work, although not a single person stopped looking in my direction. The black card suddenly felt heavier than before. Almost dangerous. I slipped it back inside the velvet box. "I need some air." Outside, the cold November breeze hit my face. I sat alone on the small bench behind the restaurant and opened the folder William had delivered. Inside were only a few documents. No contracts. No hidden conditions. The first page explained that the card could be used for medical expenses, education, housing, transportation, and daily necessities. There was no spending limit listed. No repayment schedule. No expiration date. Just one sentence printed across the bottom. Approved by AR. My hands began shaking. This couldn't be happening. Nobody gave away this kind of money. Not to a waitress. Not to someone they'd met only once. My phone buzzed. "Mom." I answered immediately. "Hi, Mom." "Sweetheart." Her voice sounded worried. "Is everything okay?" "Why?" "A man came by the apartment this morning." Every muscle in my body tightened. "What man?" "He said he represented a private medical foundation." I stopped breathing. "He already paid for next month's treatments." Silence. Complete silence. I told him there had to be some mistake. My mother continued. He smiled and said there wasn't. Tears blurred my vision. "Mom." He also left information about specialists at another hospital. She laughed nervously. "I think someone confused me with somebody important." I closed my eyes. No. Someone hadn't made a mistake. Someone had remembered every word I said. Before I could answer, another call came through. "My younger brother Ethan. I've got to call you back." I switched lines. "Ethan? You won't believe this." His voice was almost shouting. "The university emailed me." "What happened?" "I just received a full academic scholarship." My heart pounded so loudly I barely heard his next sentence. "It covers everything. Tuition. Books. Housing. Everything." "I don't understand." Neither did I. After hanging up, I sat motionless for several minutes. Then I noticed William still standing quietly near the restaurant entrance. As though he'd been waiting. I walked over. "Please." My voice cracked. "I need to know why." He regarded me with genuine kindness. "I'm afraid I can't answer that. There has to be a reason." "There is. But it isn't mine to tell." I lowered my eyes. "I don't even know how to thank him." William smiled faintly. "Miss Carter." "You already did." I looked up, confused. when you answered his question. Before I could ask what he meant, he adjusted his gloves and stepped into a waiting black sedan. The car pulled away without another word. I stood there alone, gripping the velvet box against my chest. Behind the restaurant windows, my coworkers were still watching me. Some with curiosity. Some with envy. Some with disbelief. In less than 24 hours, I had gone from being the invisible chubby waitress nobody remembered, to becoming the woman everyone suddenly believed had a secret. The truth was even stranger. I had no secret at all. I had simply told one powerful man the truth about my biggest wish. People think miracles feel loud. They don't. They arrive so quietly that you spend hours trying to convince yourself they never happened. I barely made it through my shift. Every customer seemed to notice me. Or maybe I only imagined it. The whispers followed wherever I walked. That's her. The waitress. The one who got the black card. I kept my head down and focused on carrying plates, but the restaurant no longer felt familiar. It felt like a stage where everyone had suddenly decided I was the performance. When my shift finally ended, I drove straight to the hospital. The automatic doors slid open with the same soft hiss they always had. The smell of antiseptic. The fluorescent lights. The tired faces in the waiting room. For years, this place had become part of our family's routine. I stopped at the billing office before visiting my mother. The receptionist looked up. "Can I help you? My name is Emily Carter. I just wanted to ask about my mother's balance." She typed for several seconds. Then frowned. One moment. Another employee came over. Then a supervisor. My stomach tightened. Had something gone wrong? The supervisor smiled warmly. "Miss Carter?" "Yes." "I don't know who your benefactor is." She hesitated politely. "But every outstanding balance has been paid." I stared at her. "I'm sorry?" "Every invoice." She turned the monitor slightly toward me. "Past. Present. And a prepaid treatment plan has already been arranged." I couldn't speak. "There must be some mistake." "There isn't." She handed me a printed statement. "Balance due, $0." The numbers blurred as tears filled my eyes. For the first time in nearly 4 years. There was no debt. No payment deadline. No impossible choice between medicine and rent. Nothing. I walked into my mother's room still holding the paper. She looked brighter than she had in months. "What did they tell you?" I forced a smile. "They said..." My voice broke. "They said we don't know anything anymore." She looked at me in confusion. "How?" "I don't know." That wasn't entirely true. I knew exactly who. I simply didn't understand why. My mother reached for my hand. "Emily, you didn't do something dangerous, did you?" The question hurt more than I expected. "No. I promise. I didn't ask anyone for this." She studied my face. After a long silence, she nodded. "I believe you." On my way out of the hospital, my phone vibrated again. An unknown number. "Miss Carter?" A familiar voice. "William. I hope your mother is feeling better." I leaned against the wall. "You knew." "Mr. Romano asked me to ensure the arrangements were completed before your visit." I closed my eyes. "Please. I need to thank him." "I'm afraid that won't be possible." "Why?" "Mr. Romano prefers gratitude expressed through actions rather than words." I frowned. "I don't understand." "You will." Before I could ask another question, William continued. "There is one item Mr. Romano requested that I personally deliver." My heartbeat quickened. "What is it?" "It isn't another gift." His voice remained calm. "It's a message." I waited. "He asked me to remind you of something you said?" I searched my memory. "What did I say?" William answered without hesitation. "Some things are more important than dinner." The little boy. The balloon. I had almost forgotten. Mr. Romano believes people reveal their true character in the moments they think no one is watching. The line echoed inside my mind. No one is watching. Except someone had been. Someone who had noticed the waitress everyone else overlooked. Someone who had remembered every word she spoke. Every wish she whispered. Every quiet act of kindness she never expected anyone to see. As the call ended, I looked across the hospital parking lot. A black SUV sat beneath a row of maple trees. Its windows were too dark to see inside. The engine started the moment I noticed it. Without speeding. Without drawing attention. It slowly pulled away and disappeared into evening traffic. Maybe it had been waiting for someone else. Maybe not. But for the first time since meeting Adrian Romano, I realized something far more unsettling than the black card itself. He wasn't simply changing my life. He had been protecting it. Long before I even knew there was anything to protect. The moment people believe you have money, they stop asking who you are. They start asking what they can take. 3 days passed. 3 peaceful days. My mother's treatments continued without another bill. Ethan couldn't stop smiling after receiving his scholarship package. For the first time in years, our tiny apartment felt lighter. Hope had a sound. It was my mother humming while making breakfast. It was Ethan laughing instead of calculating tuition costs. It was silence where fear used to live. I wanted to believe life was finally changing. Then Saturday arrived. Bellissimo was packed before sunset. Every table was reserved. The kitchen buzzed with orders while the dining room glowed beneath warm amber lights. I had just delivered dessert to a family celebrating a birthday when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Emily. Every muscle in my body stiffened. I turned slowly. Ryan Brooks. My ex-boyfriend. Tall. Well-dressed. The same confident smile that had once convinced me he loved me. The same smile that disappeared the day my mother's medical bills became more important than weekend vacations. "It's been a while," he said. "What are you doing here?" "I came to see you. I thought we already said everything we needed to." He glanced around the restaurant. "I heard you've been doing surprisingly well." There it was. Not, "How are you?" Not, "How's your mom?" Straight to the money. "I'm working." "You know that's not what I mean." I sighed. "I'm busy, Ryan." "I'll wait." "I'd rather you didn't." His smile tightened. "You've changed." "No. I've finally noticed who you are." Before he could answer, my manager called my name from across the room. I walked away without looking back. For the next hour, Ryan remained seated near the bar. Watching. Waiting. Every time I looked up, he was still there. When my shift finally ended, I stepped into the alley behind the restaurant. Cold air filled my lungs. I just wanted to go home. "Emily." Ryan emerged from the shadows. "I only need 5 minutes." "I don't." He stepped closer. "I know someone gave you money." My heartbeat slowed instead of racing. It was strange. A week ago, I would have been frightened. Now I was simply disappointed. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Come on. I've heard the stories. The black card. The hospital. The scholarship." He laughed without humor. "You really hit the jackpot. It's none of your business." "It could be." He lowered his voice. "I've had some bad investments." I almost smiled. "Of course. I just need a small loan. There it is." "What?" "The real reason you're here." His expression hardened. "Don't act like you're suddenly better than everyone." "I never said I was." "You owe me." I stared at him. "I owe you?" "I stood by you for 2 years." "No. You stood by me until life became inconvenient." The alley fell silent. His jaw tightened. "You've become selfish." The irony almost made me laugh. Then another voice echoed behind him. "I believe the lady asked you to leave." Ryan turned sharply. 2 men in dark suits stood at the entrance to the alley. Neither looked angry. Neither raised his voice. They simply stood there with quiet confidence. "Who are you?" Ryan demanded. The older man adjusted his coat. Someone reminding you that Miss Carter has already answered your questions. Ryan frowned. I wasn't talking to you. No. The man replied calmly. You were bothering her. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Ryan looked from the two strangers to me. What is this? I honestly didn't know. The older man smiled politely. Good evening, Miss Carter. He gave the slightest nod. We'll make sure you reach your car safely. Ryan took one uncertain step backward. You hired bodyguards? I shook my head. I didn't hire anyone. That was the truth. The two men escorted me across the parking lot without another word. As I unlocked my old Honda, I finally gathered the courage to ask. Did Mr. Romano send you? Neither man answered immediately. The younger one opened my car door. The older man offered the faintest smile. Mr. Romano made a promise. I don't remember him making one. He did. When he decided your biggest wish deserved the chance to come true. The door closed gently. By the time I looked back through the windshield, both men had already disappeared into the night. Invisible. Professional. As though they had never been there at all. 4. The second time in a week, Adrian Romano had protected me. Without asking for anything in return. Without even letting me see him. Some truths don't arrive in words. They wait patiently until you're ready to see them with your own eyes. After that night behind the restaurant, I couldn't stop thinking about Adrian Romano. Not because of the black card. Not because of the money. Because nothing made sense. People like him didn't notice people like me. Yet somehow, he remembered everything. A week later, my afternoon shift ended early. For the first time in months, I had nowhere I urgently needed to be. No second job. No hospital payment office. No overdue bill demanding attention. I found myself walking through Central Park with a cup of coffee warming my hands against the cold November wind. Children laughed near the fountain. A violinist played beneath orange maple trees. The city felt lighter. Almost unfamiliar. As I crossed one of the stone bridges, I noticed an elderly man struggling to push a wheelchair over the uneven path. Without thinking, I hurried over. Would you like some help? His tired face brightened. I'd appreciate that. Together we guided the wheelchair across the bridge. The elderly woman sitting inside smiled warmly. You remind me of our daughter. I smiled back. I'll take that as a compliment. It is. After making sure they reached the smooth walkway safely, I wished them a pleasant afternoon and continued toward the park exit. I had barely taken 10 steps when someone called my name. Miss Carter. William. Standing beside a black sedan. Perfect suit. Perfect posture. The same calm expression. I laughed softly. Do you always appear out of nowhere? Only when necessary. I was just helping two strangers. I know. That answer made me stop walking. You knew? He glanced toward the elderly couple disappearing into the distance.